Yo guys, what's going on? NGS back again for another video. In recent years, I've kind of developed a secondary catchphrase. I have a habit of saying, well, it's been a long time since you guys have seen me on camera, but for once in my goddamn miserable life, I actually have a very valid reason as to why. If you couldn't tell, the thing that's taken up the majority of the video, real estate. No? Alright, well, since I'm a steelbook fanatic, aka a steelbook whore, gotta flash this one more time. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, another video about Persona 5. Hopefully this will be the last one I do on Persona 5. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm of course talking about my final impressions / review. Now, there's a lot I gotta say about Persona 5, so keep in mind when watching this video that I am going to be all over the freaking place. Because that's just how I seem to work with things I like. I never, keep things really consistent and cohesive and coherent. Unlike normal people in the world who take goddamn notes on their phone and they freestyle from their notes, I just kind of like to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. That's what the saying is, right? It's like spaghetti. You throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. That's what they say in Hollywood when it comes to being an actor. You gotta shoot from the hip and see what hits. Well, if you shoot somebody, I'm pretty sure the bullet will stick in them, unless they're like Luke Cage or something. Anyways, let's get on to the review of Persona 5. And this video was brought to you, of course, by Vintage Seltzer Water. That is the beverage of choice for today, with a little bit of Crystal Light pink lemonade flavoring. Oh, pro tip, if y'all are actually trying to hit the whole gallon a day, a gallon and a half of water per day, definitely recommend throwing a little bit of Mio or Crystal Light in there. It goes a long way, especially, if you want to spice things up with your hydration. Anyways, let's talk about Persona 5. 2 minutes into the video. God freaking damn. So, right off the bat, I gotta say Persona 5 is, if I had to think of a term that would describe not just the story, the presentation, or the gameplay, if I had to think of a term that would describe the entire meaning of Persona 5 and what it means to the franchise, I would say intertwined. And I already know people who have played the game, they understand what I mean when I say that. But for the people out there who haven't, this is probably the most well-crafted Persona game to date. And I'm not just speaking specifically on said things. I'm talking about just in terms of a game that returns to the roots of what it means to be Persona, while also not alienating its recent fans. And that is something that you cannot say a lot of developers these days can do. More often than not, when you hear a game's coming out for a newer generation of fans, or if there's been an extended period of time between said installments, in most cases the people working on it kind of forget how to make the game. They adopt a lot of the modern intricacies that go into these titles, like casualizing it for a different audience, heavy microtransactions and DLC, those sort of things. But thankfully, Persona 5 has not suffered from said things. This game is for new fans and old ones. It actually incorporates a lot of the things that were present in the older Shin Megami Tensei Persona games, such as Persona 2, while expanding upon things that were introduced in the more recent games like Persona 3 and 4. So that's the first really big, applause I want to give to the development team, because it's very rare that you see that in games nowadays, especially from Japanese games. I mean, I've been very vocal on my channel in the past couple of years when it comes to AAA Japanese RPG development. You tend to notice that the quality in those games, like a Final Fantasy 13 and Final Fantasy 15, if you compare that to something like, The Witcher 3, they just don't compare. Like, there's just a different nuance when it comes to making those games, and for a while, the Japanese RPG scene has gone downhill because of it. Thankfully, we've got great guys at Atlas and people like Xseed who bring over all of these single A and double A RPG games that really, I hope, with this title right here, it shows to the people at Square Enix, who I think Square Enix is probably the only big head honcho when it comes to JRPGs. I hope it shows them that, hey, this is how you make a game while expanding upon the stuff that made the series great and bringing in new fans. That's what I really hope the message Persona 5 sends to the industry. But there's a lot of other things that make this game great. So we might as well talk about the things that I can get through really quickly, because it's stuff that I think even if you haven't played the Persona games, you could tell by watching a trailer for P5. And that's the presentation of the title. The game is very, very beautiful, and not just for the typical reasons that you would hear folks say a game is pretty. More often than not, when you hear people say a game is beautiful, they're talking about how photorealistic the graphics look, or they're talking about how cartoony and artsy and 8-bit looking it feels, like those sort of things. There's usually no in between. I think Persona 5 is like that perfect happy medium of really nice, stylish graphics that have a purpose in being there. More often than not, with these single A, double A Japanese RPGs, stuff that you see on handhelds, and very rarely they would make it onto the consoles. They kind of have a tendency of sameness all around when it comes to the designs. So there's really not many things that are popping and stylish and beautiful. You know what I'm saying? But in Persona 5, everything that's stylish and popping and beautiful, it has a reason, and it's not just the stuff that's in the dungeons or in the palaces, the real meat and potatoes of the games. It's stuff in the everyday life. It's the freaking loading screens. It's just the little interactions here and there, like picking up your cell phone in game. It's all the little things that really complete this experience, and I was just really surprised, even when doing the more mundane things that you would see in most Japanese RPGs. Well, not even just JRPGs, just games in general, when you're, level grinding and stuff like that. It's nice that you can appreciate the scenery, and you can appreciate the dialogue, and you can appreciate just all the little things there. So the development team definitely went above and beyond for said things, and it actually really gets me excited because I've heard a lot of good things from people who actually live in Japan who have played Persona 5 when it comes to its representation of things like Shibuya and the trains and all that stuff. So whenever I do make that eventual trip over to Land of the Rising Sun, which I'm not going to say anything, but it might be happening sooner than, I'm not going to say anything. It definitely gets me excited that I can actually go there and go full weeb and say, oh my god, look, see, this is where the Persona 5 Pro tag, mark my words, I will actually freaking do that and post it on my Facebook page. But yeah, unashamed. Yeah, the presentation is very, very, very spot on, and I couldn't get enough out of it, so A+ on that. Now we get into the other things in the game that, again, going back to the theme, intertwined, the development team really did a good job at making sure that every little thing, whether it be the gameplay, whether it be the story, whether it be the side missions, whether it be just whatever, everything has a purpose, and it all comes full circle. And I'm going to take the previous game in the series because that's the best way I can, do comparisons and contrasts. And it's a game that I think, most people have played, that game being Persona 4 Golden. If you are a Persona fan, or if you've just picked up the series for the first time with Persona 4, then you'll understand what I'm talking about after this quick water break. So, when you're talking about a game such as Persona 4, in Persona 4, while I love the crap out of the game, it's one of my all-time favorites, there was kind of a disjointedness, if that's a word, that went with the story and the gameplay. More often than not, when it came to things that would be happening with story stuff, like main story content, there is definitely a big contrast between that and the side missions. Like, literally, when you would be going into the dungeons and doing your sort of thing with the story stuff, you can obviously tell, oh, this is story stuff. Okay, cool. So there was kind of a disconnect that had appeared with the title. Persona 5 does a lot better. It does a better job handling the story content and bridging you from the first big part of the story to the next big part of the story to the next big part of the story, and it intertwines that by opening up all these other side missions in between that actually have a deeper meaning within the story. So the way they do it is you would have the first the main meat and potatoes where you're going to be fighting are these things called the palaces. And these palaces, I guess you could say, they're kind of based off of really famous heists, because your main characters here are phantom thieves. So you have a lot of places that you would see in like the old serials and stuff. Where are the phantom thieves going to strike? They would be pillaging from a castle. They'd be going through pyramids. They'd be going through, just all these crazy and wacky things that you would see in these movies. And it's done very, very well in that respect. So it feels extremely organic, as opposed to oh, we're just going to go into this dungeon right here because we have to change the heart of this person. And then we're going to do it again. And do it again. And do it again because we're filling out our party. So, yeah, that's another plus that this game has over Persona 4. It doesn't feel as samey. Everything here just feels like a breath of fresh air as far as story content and how the characters are introduced. The characters this time around, you don't have to save all of their hearts. These characters are actually intertwined with the main overarching. You know, I've been using that term for about 10 years now, and nobody has corrected me on the proper pronunciation of it. So if someone down below in the comment section wants to tell me how I actually pronounce it, please. But the way your side characters are introduced and how they're intertwined with the palaces, everything comes together in this overarching story. And again, it's intertwined very organically, so it doesn't feel out of place. And that's something I really did enjoy, because if the story is just all over the place and disjointed and they're withholding information and not telling you things, and then you got to buy the DLC to figure out what happened to this character who disappears 9 chapters in, I don't think that makes for great storytelling. So here, the fact that everything's together, it puts you in sort of this marathon-esque mode where you just want to keep playing to find out what happens next. Because it's very interesting. I mean, the way the story is told, it's not necessarily just things going from point A to point B. You have some flashback segments that happen that explain some stuff. They withhold some information until later on in the game. They have you thinking something, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe, And then everything, again, comes together full circle towards the end of the game. You're kind of seeing a pattern here, right? Everything's coming full circle. So the way that the story is intertwined with the dungeons and the palaces, very, well, the dungeons and the palaces, the exact same thing. The way the story is intertwined with the palaces is very cool. But there's also another level of this that is, again, intertwined with the story. Once the side missions open up, you have this whole separate section of dungeons called the Mementos. And this is very similar if you've played the past Persona games, 3 and 4, and how they did their dungeon crawling. The past Persona games are very much dungeon crawlers. If you're looking at the design of the rooms, not much deviation. And yeah, you can attribute that to the fact that they were done on older hardware, more antiquated hardware. They didn't have... Well, this is developed on PS3 and then made fancy with PS4 later. But with those games, you can definitely feel they felt like more dungeon crawlers. This one, they actually have a whole section of that, which is dungeon crawling, and the rooms change, and there's little variations every single time you go, and that's where the majority of your side missions are held, and these side missions open up throughout the story, and some of the social and confidants, which I'll get to later, those things are intertwined, and you go deeper into these Mementos dungeons, and you go there to complete said mission. So it's a nice balance where you can do the main palace stuff, which is the really fancy, grade A stuff, and then all the side missions are handled in this lesser dungeon crawling-esque arena sort of thing. So that was pretty freaking cool. But since I brought it up, we might as well talk about it. Social links. Social links do make a return in Persona 5. They're called confidants, but they're essentially social links, so I'm just going to call them social links. Social links, for those of you guys who don't know, is where you can actually form bonds with side characters in the game. And these can range from members of your party to people around the town to just random individuals in general. And there's a lot of bonuses and perks for maxing out said social links, not only in terms of basically monetary increases that you get in game. You get new skills that'll be really helpful in battle. You get a lot of just cool things from there, but it's your way into understanding these characters more, because the characters get development throughout the story, but when you do these social links, that's where you get a better understanding and grasp of who they are. So you definitely want to do the social links in whatever game you're playing, be it P3, P4, and P5. But this is where I get into my first major negative with Persona 5. When it came to the social links, to be honest, they really weren't that great. And I know I'm gonna get so much flack from the Persona fandom right there, but to be honest, compared to the stuff that was in Persona 4 Golden, the stuff in Persona 5 was pretty weak. I mean, that's not to say that all of them are bad, don't get me wrong, there's some really good ones in there, but more often than not, it just feels like the way that they were structured is just kind of like you get to the resolution faster than it actually being at the very end. So think of it like you're learning more about the character, you get to the peak, which is the resolution, and you get there, a little more than halfway, and then it just kind of tapers off and just does its own thing. So to me, just the level of really important and interesting social links that you would see in the characters here, just they really weren't much of anything. I mean, you got some cool things out of them that will help you in game, of course, but I just didn't think that the quality of the social links this time around compared to something like Persona 4, they didn't have that much meaning and impact, which was very disappointing because these social links are what you're going to be doing on your spare time after school. And the fact that they're not really worth much of anything outside of just doing it to pass the time and gaining new stuff, it's kind of like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like when I want these social links to be maxed out, I want to max them out for a reason and get something in return. So that's like my biggest negative in this game, because I was expecting it to be, so much more refined and vast and opening up, but it's just kind of like, it's all right. It's not bad, but it's not particularly amazing. But again, these social links are very important to the whole theme of the game because you get so many bonuses out of it. For example, if you max out the social link for this one character, it actually helps you in combat with demon negotiation, which I should talk about right now. For those of you guys who are wondering how the game plays and everything, Persona is set up like a standard, turn-based Japanese RPG, but it's got a mix of some Pokemon action going on in the sense that you actually recruit the demons that you fight into your army, if you will. Unlike Persona 4, where you didn't really recruit the enemies, you just got these tarot cards and you can make personas from them. These demons, you actually recruit them, so you get their skills and you get them to join your side. And the demon negotiation basically happens once you can surround all the demons by hitting all of their weak points. And once you do that, you can ask them from things like joining my cause, which means coming to my side and becoming my persona. You can ask them for money, you can ask them for items. And throughout all three of those things, it usually comes down to you having a one-on-one conversation with them. Now, in previous SMT games, the conversations were a little bit more drawn out, especially in Shin Megami Tensei 4. In that game, it was so weird because the conversations go on for a while. I think it was kind of gimped in their favor because in certain cases, the demons in Shin Megami Tensei 4 would ask for items upon items, so much to the point that sometimes they won't even join your side. They might just say, hey, fuck you, I got what y'all wanted, so goodbye. And now you're out a couple of good items, and it's just like, well, fuck, man. This time around, it's a little bit more balanced, so you'll have this one-on-one conversation where you have to answer these series of questions. And it's not just, the same recycled and repeated stuff over and over and over again. They have a little bit of a flair to them, and you have to pick what they would respond to. And if you get both of them right, they can come to your side, and you can get their powers. If you max out one of the confidants, you can actually speed up the process and have them join your side immediately. Likewise, if you max out one of the other confidants, you can make it so there's a little bit of more influence on your end, so you can talk to them faster. Another one of the confidants is you can get I guess you can call it a do-over, so you get a chance to do it again. So there's a lot of benefits in maxing out the confidants because it can help, especially if you want to get some of the more stubborn persona to come your way. And it's not just recruiting the persona, but sometimes you can get some really nice skill cards by asking them for the goods. And this is a great way to get some money because, again, one of the confidants gives you the ability to ask them for more money. And more money is always better because a lot of the items that you would buy in this game are pretty freaking expensive. And I'm talking like the healing items and all that stuff you would get from the clinic. So you want to make sure you have a lot of money just because you're going to be spending a shit ton of it getting some healing items. But yeah, the battle system is actually set up rather well. They've incorporated a couple of new elements in there, so it's not just the standard ones that you saw in the other games. You have nuclear, and you have I call it psychedelic damage, but it's called psi damage. I like it psychedelic. It's purple and crazy like that. You get that as well. And, you know, it just adds new dimensions to the game, you know, just more varieties, the better. And they also had this really cool thing when it comes to the demon negotiations that actually works in the favor of the demons. Let's say, for example, your enemy surrounds you, which basically means that they ambush you instead. If they get the ability to do that, and let's say they knock down your character with a critical, they can actually take your teammate hostage. And if they take your teammate hostage, this is not like the demon negotiations where you can just say, no, blah, blah, blah. Nah. They usually ask for some items or some HP or some SP so they won't kill your character. Now, you could do one of two things. You could refuse the option, which basically means they kill your character. Or you can call this thing called the Thieves Guild, which I never used, but I assume that's just like a get-out-of-jail-free card. You just use that and you get your teammate back. But yeah, it definitely just goes to show you that you should definitely take the time to ambush the enemies first and make sure you don't get knocked on your ass. So yeah, I just love the way the combat system is done in this game. And, you know, like I said, everything is intertwined, from the gameplay to the story to how everything is brought together. They did a really freaking good job on that. Going into some of the other things as well, when it comes to the palaces in this, while they are very, you know, dynamic and interesting and really awesome to look at, they've definitely got a bit more of a puzzle segment to them. The puzzles are not necessarily to advance in the game. They're more often than not used to, I guess, just find ways back to the original starting point, because once you get farther along in these palaces, sometimes you don't have access to a safe room. And in one of the palaces towards the end game, it actually just opens up. Like, once you open up the door at the very end, it's just a straight shot back to where you originally started. So while it is advancing to later parts in there, it's more often than not just making it so you can go back to where you came just in case, so you don't get fucked up. But the designs of palaces are pretty freaking cool. Sometimes it does get irritating towards the midpoint of the game, because some palaces just have some really annoying things attached to them, and it's like, why do you do this? But they're done for a purpose and to not make it so straightforward. But to be honest, if you know how to get through basic arithmetic and, you know, just cognitive stuff, you'll understand how to get through these palaces. It's not brain science or rocket surgery, to quote Swoozy. But yeah, other than that, I think I've covered the majority of the things in the game that I... no, actually I haven't. There are a couple of things as well. In terms of your army, building your demon army, persona fusions and everything, of course that's included in the game, but they included some other stuff as well. So there's this thing called, I believe it's called the Gallows, which comes down to you strengthening your persona. So you sacrifice one persona to buff up another one, and they have these special demons called treasure demons, and those demons yield more experience and cool shit that you can get. And you encounter those throughout mementos and throughout some of the palaces. So those are really interesting ones to look out for. In addition to that, you also have, what was this other one called? I think the electric chair. That one is where you can take your persona and craft them into an item. So some of the really awesome, like higher level, unique persona, you can actually create items out of them. So the main guy you're looking at right there in the background, Arsene, he can actually become a weapon called Arsene's Cane, and you can use that weapon. You can use other high-ranking persona, and they can become weapons as well. So, you know, some really awesome, cool, savage weaponry, if you will, you get from sacrificing those personas, and you just get a lot of benefits from registering them in the compendium, and, you know, building up your persona decks, if you will. And yeah, it definitely pays to go the extra mile when it comes to crafting up your army. And they added in this thing called network fusion, which is essentially, it's kind of like, I don't know a really good analogy for this, but it's basically where it's kind of like a gamble. You send one of your persona to the internet, and someone else who has sent one of their persona to the internet, they'll basically find a way to fuse them, and you get whatever comes back out, this demon abomination. And sometimes it works, sometimes you get really high ranking persona, other time you just get crap. But you know, that's the it's the gamble you get out of it. You can use it once a day, and I recommend using it just so you can get really interesting persona. Granted, they don't get the perks that you would get from fusing them, but it's still pretty cool because, like I said, you can get some awesome looking persona. And other than that, I think that's all I wanted to say as far as the gameplay and the story is concerned. Well, not the story. I have a couple things to say about the story later. As far as like the gameplay and the things that they introduced, everything is just it just works. It works very freaking well in this game. There are a couple of minor complaints that I want to leverage towards the story. Granted, they're not necessarily major complaints, but I felt that for a good majority of the game, and you'll have to have played this to understand where I'm going with this, for a majority of the game, it feels like certain instances in the story you're closed off. There's one character who is the smiling cat in the corner right there, who prohibits you from doing much of anything for certain parts of the story, and it's reoccurring. It's not just at the beginning of the game and then they take off the training wheels and it's like, bye Timmy, go kill yourself. It's not like that. There are very, very, very numerous times where, well, that made no sense grammatically. Wow. There are numerous times in the game where you're just prohibited from doing anything, and it kind of sucks. It's not the majority of the game, but it's just annoying. It's like, I want to do things. Let me do things, Morgana, you freaking dictator. Let's not do that today. Sushi-loving feline dictator. Ugh. But yeah, I just wish that there were less instances like that, and I wish I was able to do more in those situations. But yeah, the story is just told very well. Everything is connected. I really did love the cast of the game. The cast is great. I'm one of the rare people who likes the entirety of the cast through all the Persona games. I know people have preferences. They love the P3 cast. They hate the P4 cast. I love everybody. If I can love the majority of the cast and I can see where you're going with the story, then it's all cool. It's all cool with me, man. And I really enjoyed every single character. They got their own time to shine, and it was great. There were a couple of things I would have done differently with the story when it gets to the end game. Like the last third of the game, it kind of becomes very, very safe. Which I was like, oh man, really? You're going down this road? Because it becomes very, very predictable. I'm not going to get into spoilers here, because that's not what this video is about. But it just becomes very predictable. It serves its purpose, but it's like, really? I thought you were going to go above and beyond, man. So it's just, the way you think the game will end, it ends, and it's just, I don't know, it's like you feel like what they were building up was like so much grander, but it's just like, nah. There's a really cool thing towards the end of the game that's just like, oh, holy shit, I didn't think they would do that, but it's, again, a spoiler, so I can't talk about it. But it's just, I wish that all the other things in the game were on that same level. It's just, once you hit the resolution of the game, it's like, well, that's it. I mean, you're not left destroyed like you were with Persona 3 and Persona 4. This game is just like, oh, okay, that's cool. Next game. That was literally me. After I beat the game, I was like, really? This is the end of the game? I mean, it works, but it felt kind of like an anime season ending and not the series ending. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority when it comes to that. The story overall was great, but it's just like, so we're just ending right here. I mean, like I said, I know I'm blowing it out of proportions. It works, but you were just like expecting more. Because the way the game builds up to it, it's like, oh yeah. Because like this game, don't let any, like, looking at this cover, looking at this cat, looking at these smiling characters, don't get it twisted. This game is rated M for a reason. There are many, many, many mature themes in this game. And that's actually something I really did enjoy about Persona 5. It brought us back to the more mature storytelling of Persona 2 and 3. Not to say Persona 4 wasn't mature, but, I mean, like, I love the game to death, but that really was Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated type shit. But with this one here, from the jump, it's straight up mature content. And as you get deeper and deeper into the game, there's some stuff, I mean, it doesn't quite reach the levels of Persona 2, but it's up there. It's up there in terms of the mature things that the characters are going through. And I loved it for it, man. It's got a great balance of the darkness. It's got a great balance of the humor. It's got the great balance of serious type behavior. And like I said, it warrants that M rating because it goes through a lot of deep shit. Deals with a lot of deep shit, I'm sorry. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that's all I wanted to say about Persona 5. It's definitely the best crafted Persona game to date. In a lot of ways, it is the best Persona game. There were a couple of grievances that I had in terms of game design, such as the social links and, just ways I would have done the story. But overall, the game is it was so worth the wait. Worth the wait. It was worth the wait. The English dub was spectacular. I know there was going to be a lot of weebs out there who were like, no, it wasn't, because this and that, and mistranslation. Like, these people. That's all I can freaking say. But yeah, it was definitely worth the wait. If you are looking for a game that you can sink a shit ton of time into and that you can marathon with no complaints, no real crazy grievances, like, oh, I gotta wait for the season pass, or they gotta patch this, they gotta fix that, definitely pick up Persona 5. It is so worth the $65, and I think that if you kind of you were like me and you lapsed back into Japanese RPGs and you want really high quality ones, you can't go wrong with the Persona series. I definitely think that you are going to get your money's worth out of it. And I think that's all I want to say. So, from me to you for now, my name is NGS, signing out, and like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.